ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦਿ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦਿ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦਿ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦਿ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦਿ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸਚ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ 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 ਗਿਆਨ ਧਿਆਨ ਕਿਛ ਕਰਮ ਨ ਜਾਨਾ ਨਾਹਿਨ ਨਿਰਮਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ ਕੈ ਅੰਚਲ ਲਾਵਹੁ ਵਿਖਮ ਨਦੀ ਜਾਇ ਤਰਣੀ ਗਿਆਨ ਧਿਆਨ ਕਿਛ ਕਰਮ ਨ ਜਾਣਾ ਸਾਰ ਨ ਜਾਣਾ ਤੇਰੀ ਸਭ ਤੇ ਵੱਡਾ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਨਾਨਕ ਜਿਨ ਕਲ ਰਾਖੀ ਮੇਰੀ तेरे जोर मैं गूंगा कहता हूँ तेरा सदका तेरी शरण
सतनाम श्री वाहिगुरु साहिब जी मन्नै सुरत होवै मन बुद्ध मन्नै सगल भवन की सुध मन्नै मोह झूठा ना खाए मन्नै जम कै साथ न जाए ऐसा नाम निरंजन होए जे को मन जानै मन कोए मन्नै सुरत होवै मन बुद्ध।
वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। धन धन सतगुरु साहिब जी पतित पावन भगत वत्सल किरपा दे खजाने जोत रूप ਧੰਨ ਸਤਿਗੁਰੂ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਜੀ ਦੀ ਸਾਜੀ ਨਿਵਾਜੀ ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ। We're blessed to be gathered here today to continue the discourse and learn about the message of Sri Japji Sahib. Dhੰਨ Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib ji is continuing his discussion with the Siddhs. The Siddhs have just started asking about the importance of believing. They heard about the importance of listening, and that from listening you gain understanding, and then when you gain understanding they have asked about the importance of then believing and then starting to follow the teachings. Last time round, when they initially asked this question, Dhੰਨ Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib ji gave them the reply, manne ki gat kahi na jaye, je ko kahai pichhe pachtaye. So the way of the believer is not easily explained. Those who try will only repent, because it is very difficult to explain about the importance of believing and the extent of the way of a believer. This week, the Siddhs continue their discussion, and understanding that Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji has explained that to them, they still request Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji to expand on and explain the importance of believing and the importance and the mahatam of the believer.
Manna surto huwa man buddha.
So, Tan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji replies to the Siddhs, and they continue in their explanation of the importance of a believer. Manna, by truly believing, Surt hove man buddha. Surt hove. Surt is like your focus, your contemplation, your comprehension, your understanding, or the knowledge. So by being a believer, you gain that knowledge, that comprehension, that understanding. Sarta hove, so you gain that man buddh in your man, in your mind, and then in your buddh or your buddhi. Now in English we generally talk about the mind, and we don't really extend to what Gurbani describes as the buddhi or the buddha. And in Gurbani, man means mind, and buddha is like your conscience, or your where you make common sense decisions, or your sense, or your place where the understanding of your mind is. That is called the buddha. It's separated in Gurbani. So in English we generally, or in the Western world, we generally just talk about the mind, and we explain everything within the mind. But Gurbani goes further and deeper and separates the buddhi from the mind. Now whether that buddhi is within the mind of the body, obviously Waheguru knows, or if that is a separate, complete separate entity. But man in Gurbani is described as being the mind, and buddha is your common sense, your intellect, where you make conscious, positive, let's say, decisions, common sense decisions. So Sarta hove, like I've explained, you gain the understanding, you gain the knowledge, the comprehension of Waheguru in your mind, and then in your intellect, in your understanding, in where your common sense, where you make decisions. So it develops from the mind to that place, because the buddhi is seen as a better place than the mind. The mind can be seen as where the mind is controlled by our emotions, and our emotions are linked to the Panch Jor, Kam, Krodha, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar, and where our buddhi is sort of like, that's why I'm saying, like your conscience. And if you're doing something wrong, your mind makes that decision to do an action, and it's your buddhi then questions what you're doing. So because you start gaining that understanding in your mind, it's easier to use your buddhi, your common sense, your intellect, to stay away from bad actions and try to do more positive actions. So a true believer, a believer develops that knowledge, develops that comprehension, and using their buddhi, they are then able to start controlling their mind to do positive things. So they gain that comprehension. Also, they start Sarta hove. They get the comprehension of the form of Waheguru, because as you continue meditating, repeating, reciting the name of the Lord, whether that be in the form of Mool Mantar, which is Waheguru, whether that in the form of Mool Mantar as we recited at the start, or whether that be in the form of any Gurbani, the Naam, the name of the Lord, in those forms, you start gaining understanding the Sarup, the form of God, the Lord. in your mind, and that develops into your buddhi. So a true believer gets that understanding from their mind, they use their buddhi, and their mind starts making positive decisions, and they become closer and closer to Waheguru.
Manna sagal pavan ki sodh.
Manna, the believer. Sagal pavan ki sodh. Sagal pavan. Now pavan initially can be described as this world. Sagal pavan, all the world. Ki sodh, you gain knowledge of the world. Now, that doesn't just mean being streetwise. That means you can actually, the knowledge of every single corner of this world, every single part of this world, you gain that knowledge. And true knowledge is if you, for example, if somebody asks you to describe what London is like, if you've never been to London, you can't describe that firsthand because you haven't been there, you haven't seen it. However, a true believer actually sees everything. Sagal pavan ki sodh. I'll try and explain it a little bit better with this Sakhi. Baba Buddha Sahib Ji was the Sikh who would perform the act of passing on the Gurgaddi, the Guruship, through the Gurus. And they came at the time of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji and lived to the time of Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, our 6th Guru. Now, in the time of Tan Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji, our 3rd Guru, when Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji was given the Guruship, the son of Guru Angad Dev Ji was quite annoyed because they felt that they had a birthright, because they were the son, they had a birthright of becoming the Guru. And they actually kicked Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji out of anger, out of growth. And when that happened, Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji left and they went to their pind, which was Basarke. Basarke is in the north of Punjab, and they went from Goindwal Sahib and Khadur Sahib, where Sri Guru Angad Dev Sahib Ji spent most of their time, which is the beginnings, sort of like central north, the north of the centre of Punjab. They didn't tell anybody where they went, so none of the Sikh Sangatan, none of the congregation knew where they'd gone. The Sikhs, obviously knowing and believing that they were the true Guru, Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji, they felt very sad because they couldn't do the darshan of the true Guru. And so they thought they could go to the most learned Gursikh, Baba Buddha Sahib Ji. Surely they would know. Surely Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji would have told them where they had gone. And when they came to Baba Buddha Sahib Ji, Baba Buddha Sahib Ji was a true believer. That's why they were given the seva of performing the act of passing the Gurgaddi, the Guruship, to each Guru. And because they were a true believer, they had Sagal Pavan Ki Sodh. They knew about this whole world. They knew where everything was, what happens exactly. So, a word that is used in Gurbani and Punjabi and in Sikhi, they antar dhyan. Antar means inside. Dhyan means obviously their concentration. They put their dhyan inside to see where Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji was. And they realized that Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji were in their pind, where they were from, Basarke, and they were sitting, meditating in their house there. So because they were a true believer, they had developed, their spirituality had developed such that they were able to do that. They had antarjamata, that's the other word. They knew, knower of everything. Now Guruji and the Lord God is described as antarjami. We read in Kirtan Sohela, antarjami purkh vidate. Antarjami, the knower of everything, the knower of our hearts, the knower of everything, absolute. But a Gursikh, who's a true believer, develops that as well. And so they get Sagal Pavan ki sud, which is a part of that. They know where everything is. They have complete knowledge of all, not just this world, but of all the universe, of all creation. But Baba Buddha Sahib Ji, continuing the Sakhi, showed their humbleness and didn't show this quality, because a Gursikh never shows their qualities. All these spiritual states that we've been learning about in these previous weeks are stages that Gursikhs go through. However, they don't get too excited by these, because we've learnt right at the start, it's about the hukam, following the command of Waheguru. And they know these stages and this spiritual wisdom are just different stages or places on the path to becoming one with the Lord. And so they don't get too excited by this. They accept these gifts, these blessings as the hukam. They don't use them for wrongful acts. And they are only used within the hukam, within the command of the Lord. So Gursikhs don't generally show that they have these spiritual powers, if you want to use that word, just to help us understand. So Baba Buddha Sahib Ji knew they were there. However, hiding all of this, they said to the Sangat that Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji's horse is still present in the Sangat. If we untie the horse and let the horse roam, surely the horse would go to its master, because horses are known to be like that. The horse would go to its master, master being obviously Tan Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji, and we the Sangat will follow. And the horse in fact did continue all the way to Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji's pind. When they got to the pind, the house where Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji was at, the door was locked. There was a sign outside that no one is to enter this way. And following the command of Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji, Baba Buddha Sahib Ji said, and the Sangata said, but we can't go inside this way through the door, because there's a sign there. It says no one's to go in. We can't break that hukam of Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji, that order. So what Baba Buddha Sahib Ji did, he went around the back of the house and made a hole in the wall and went into the hall, did the benti to Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji. Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji came out and gave their darshan and became, well, they already were, but then they came out to be the third Guru of the Sikhs. Now, just to continue that Sakhi, there's a Gurdwara where that event took place. It's called San Sahib Gurdwara, because in Punjabi you say Baba Buddha Sahib Ji ne san kaddi si, they made a hole in that wall. And Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji blessed the Sikhs that any Sikh that goes there, does the Ardas Benti, climbs through that hole, because that hole in the wall is still present within the Gurdwara. The Gurdwara has become bigger, and the hole is within the Gurdwara where Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji is now Prakash, just behind the Manji side. There's also a Sarovar there. So a Gursikh who does the Ardas Benti, does Ishnan in the Sarovar, goes through the hole, sits in Maharaj's Hajuri, in the Sangat, in the court, and does one Japji Sahib da part, they will gain liberation. Guruji will always protect them. They will be taken from the 8.4 million life forms. And that Gurdwara is still there, and many Sikhs go there. So two things, the blessing of Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji, and again, the importance of Japji Sahib comes through again. That Japji Sahib da part, and going through the act of going through the San Sahib Gurdwara, doing Ishnan in the Sarovar, you gain liberation. At the same time, following all the teachings. But the key that we're taking away from the message from this Pankti, Manne, a true believer, Sagal Pavan ki Sud, has true knowledge, gains true understanding of the whole universe, knowing where anything and everything is. Now, Baba Buddha Sahib Ji's great grandson, Bhai Ram Koir, after they took Amrit, they were known as Baba Gurbaksh Singh. They were a true believer as well. And they had Sagal Pavan ki Sud. They knew about the whole universe. And it's not just about knowing about the world and knowing about the universe, as this next, what I'm about to share with you, shows. Because after the time of the Gurus, the Sikh Sangata would obviously listen to the Sakhiyan of the Gurus. Now, it's in this day and age, we have Pothiyan, we have our history is written, so anybody explaining the history could research, read the Pothiyan and come and share the Sakhi, or from what they were told by their forefathers. But in those days, there was no other way apart from being told by your parents, your grandparents, what had happened. But if your parents or your forefathers had only lived or had only come into the Sikh sangat of the time of maybe the 9th and 10th Guru, how would they know what happened in the times of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd Guru? Bhai Ram Kaur ji or Baba Gurbaksh Singh had Sagal Pavan ki Sud because they were a true believer. And what they did for the Sikh Sangata of the time, so if they were a great grandchild of Baba Buddha Sahib ji, they were around after, some time after Sri Guru Gobind Singh Sahib ji. And they would share the Sakhiyan of the Gurus with the Sikh Sangata, with the Khalsa Panth. How they would do that is because they were a true believer, they would put Antar Dhyan, using that phrase again, Antar Dhyan, Antar meaning inside, Dhyan meaning their concentration, and they would focus. And just like watching a film, or as we watch TV now, we see a film and we see scenes going in front of us. When they would put Antar Dhyan, concentrate within, they would see, as a scene in a film, the Sakhiyan actually happening, everything happening, the Kautaks, Guru Nanak Dev Sahib ji on their travels, meeting the Siddhs, Sri Guru Angad Dev Sahib ji, Sri Guru Amar Das Sahib ji, Sri Guru Ram Das Sahib ji, Tan Sri Guru Arjan Dev Sahib ji gaining Shahidi, sitting on the Tati Tabi, Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib ji, Tan Sri Guru Har Rai Sahib ji, Sri Guru Har Krishna Sahib ji curing the smallpox of all the Sangat in Delhi, Tan Sri Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib ji, who gave their head for human rights, Tan Sri Guru Gobind Singh Sahib ji, and how they took the heads of the Panj Pyare and gave Amrit Khandari Pahal to the Sikh Sangat, how the Sahibzade were Shaheed. Because they were true believers, they could see all of that by putting Antar Dhyan, concentration within, because they were believers. So when they would meditate, they would see these scenes as if they were happening in front of them. So this is how, or this is the spiritual stage of a true believer. Now taking it to us, Sagal Pavan, just taking it a little bit further, Pavan can also mean states of consciousness. Okay? There are 3 states of consciousness that are described, or in our mind, or our sort of a conscience. One is called Jagat Avastha. Jagat means being awake, like we are now, unless anyone's fallen asleep, we're awake. That's called Jagat conscience or Jagat Avastha. Then this Supan Avastha. Supan when we're dreaming. So we're asleep but we're having a dream. And then our conscience can be in deep sleep, which is called Sukhopat Avastha. So you have Jagat, Supan, Sukhopat, Sagat Pavan ki Sud. So if they're the Pavans, now if you say you're in deep sleep, then how, you may have a question, well, how can you be conscious? Because you're in deep sleep, you don't know what happens. Obviously, when we're awake, that's a conscience because we know what's happening. When we're dreaming, we have dreams and we think of things that could be us, or they could be just different scenes that we're seeing. That's a conscience. But even deep sleep, Sukhopat Avastha, is a conscience, is a state of consciousness, because if we were in deep sleep and it wasn't a state of consciousness, we would never come out of it. We'd never wake up again. There must be something there that triggers us to wake up. So that's why it's a state of consciousness. So those 3 states of mind, let's say, whether we're awake, whether we're dreaming, or whether we're in deep sleep, when we don't necessarily know what goes on because we're in deep sleep, if you're a true believer, you gain Sagar Pavan, these 3 states, Ki Sud, you understand, or you gain the knowledge of those 3 states. And you gain the knowledge that those 3 states are all false. We know that this state, well, we know that dreaming is false because when we wake up from a dream, if we've been really excited by it, or we've enjoyed the dream, when we wake up we realize it was false because it was just a dream. How is this state false? Awake, because we think, well, these things are happening. Well, this is false because we're only here for a certain amount of time. This is false because Guruji describes it as an illusion. Truth is what is infinite. I've described that many times over these few weeks, how Guruji is explaining that ultimate truth is something that is infinite. If it's not infinite, it's not true, therefore it must be false. So even this world, us living, is false because we're not going to be here forever. And then deep sleep, because that doesn't last, and that is false also because we don't have the knowledge of Waheguru. We're not one with Waheguru in that state of mind. We're in deep sleep, we're in nothingness. Some would argue that we're in deep sleep constantly, because if we haven't found Waheguru, then we're in deep sleep, because we're away from being truly awake and being truly one with Waheguru. So a true believer, if we want to be true believers, or when we follow this path, we will understand about these three states and the deeper meanings and the deeper levels of consciousness, because we'll find true and ultimate consciousness, because we'll be one with Waheguru, and that is called Turiya Avastha, or Chautha Pad, if we read Gurbani, Turiya Avastha, true consciousness. That's consciousness of being one with Waheguru. So a true believer understands those three states as being false, and the only state as being true is Turiya, where they are one with Waheguru.
Manna mohe chotha na khaye.
Manna, a true believer, mohe chotha na khaye. Now, the initial translation, which we generally see, mohe could mean face, chota, na khaye. We don't face blows, or we don't face hits on our face, or, you know, we can say that our face is not blackened. I'm not going to develop too much into the Sakhi, but there was a time, in the times when Sri Guru Angad Dev Sahib Ji was known as Bhai Lehna Ji, they asked Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji to show them what Sun Samadhi looks like. Sun Samadhi, basically the state, in simple terms, Sachkhand, the realm of Waheguru. And Guruji asked them to walk in a certain direction, and they will soon get to it. But as they were walking, they went through 4 different states, or realms, if you would. The first one they saw is people's face were all black. So maybe they were being shown a type of hell, because we've learned that there's many hells and there's many heavens, and they're not. They're temporary, just like this world. And a true heaven, if you want to use those terms, is only when you're one with Waheguru, which we say has been Sachkhand. So their faces were blackened, and obviously they went through these other 3 places, which I'm not going to develop on. I'll leave that for another time. But the faces were blackened. When they came back and they asked Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji about the 4 places, and then obviously the 5th was they did see Sun Samadhi. But specifically here, that links to this Pankti, the peoples whose face were blackened were, Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji described them as people, while they were living, they would take loans, borrow lots of money of various people, and then they would not pay them back. They would purposely not pay them back. It may be in this day and age we have loans, and we try to pay them back, but they completely renounce and they don't pay them back, and they just say, and then in the next world, or in hell, or in this type of hell, those people's faces are blackened. But if you're a true believer, you follow a righteous path, so your face doesn't become blackened. Sort of a deeper thinking, mohe can be translated as being moh, one of the panch jor, moh meaning attachment. Moh diya chota. So the blows of moh, of attachment, are not faced by a true believer. Again, in the time of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji. Now on Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji's travels, they would go to various places, and they would obviously tar or liberate the sangat. Now there was this old person, and he was quite old, he had 4 sons. And Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji walked past his village, and that person was sat on his wall instructing his sons, his 4 sons, to do the work. Somebody was, milking the cows, one of the sons was cutting the hay, one of the sons was tidying up, and one of the sons was going off. And he was just instructing them, his 4 sons, to do their daily work, their daily chores of the house. And Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji walked past this place with Bhai Mardana Ji, and they sat on the wall next to this old person. They said, "You're getting really old now. Maybe it's the time to contemplate and be a believer. Be a believer and follow the true way, the true path." Now this person, in his previous life forms, had done some positive things, and Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji was blessing him with liberation. However, he didn't believe, or he didn't follow the bhajan of Stan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji at that point. He said, yeah, you may be right, Stan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji, but look at my 4 sons here. If I wasn't alive, these guys wouldn't know what to do. I have to instruct them every morning to do the daily work of the house. And Stan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji asked them again, no, they should be alright. You need to focus on Waheguru now. They are coming to your last days, and if you haven't done all your life, this is definitely the time to do it. He still was adamant that he needs to instruct his family. And Stan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji said, that's fine, and they carried on in their travels. And what happened to that old person? He passed away, but because he had more, he had this attachment, and he didn't believe in the teaching of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji. When he died, he became a bull or a cow or a buffalo that would give milk there. Because in his mind was that this family, who's going to look after them? So he became a buffalo to give milk to that family. And Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji later on came through that place again. And at that point, obviously the 4 sons knew who Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji was. They recognised them as the Guru of the Sikhs, because they'd come before. And they'd come and they'd matha take to Guruji. And Guruji asked them, where's your father? He was telling me last time I was here that he instructs you, I can't see him here, you seem to be doing everything yourselves. And they told Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji that our father's passed away. So Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji looked across the courtyard and he saw this buffalo. And he saw that actually the father is that buffalo. And so Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji went over to the buffalo, and within the buffalo, this old person spoke with Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji. And Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji said, see, I told you, your last days, it's time to believe now. It's time to believe in the teachings of the Lord, the giver, the organizer, the deliverer of our souls. And now you're a buffalo, this is what you've had to become. You didn't believe, and you had to face the blows of attachment. And this person still says, he didn't say, well, Guruji saved me. Surely all of us at that point would have said that. Guruji says, well, I'll save you now. I'll liberate you now. And he goes, no, Guruji. Because a buffalo in this day and age costs 500 rupees in that time. And if you are to liberate me, obviously this body will die. So the cost of this me was 500 rupees to them. Then they'd have to find another buffalo to milk. That'll be another 500 rupees. That'll be 1,000. Therefore, it cost them 1,000. And I don't really want that to happen to them. Because he was still attached to them. He wasn't still believing or trusting the bhajan of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji. And Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji said, fine. If you don't want to be saved now, I'll go. And Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji continued on their travels again. That buffalo had its time. And the buffalo passed away. And because that person was still not believing in the bhajan, in the command of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji, he now became a dog. And he became a dog in that household. And just as dogs do, well, in some places, definitely in India, they're like security guards. At night time, the family would go to sleep, and the dog would bark if any person was passing, and he would be a security because he was looking after their money. Because in his mind was looking after the money, looking after their well-being. And Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji came by again, and he refused again, because he's obviously the security. And if he's liberated, the dog will obviously die, the body of the dog, and then they wouldn't have no security. And then they're doing well now, this family. A Jor might come and burgle the money, take the goods. So no, I've got to stay here and be the security of the family, because he was still attached to his family. And Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji continued on their travels. When the dog died, because the dog in their mind, in his mind, that person was the money, he then became a snake. Gurbani says that if you think of money in your last thoughts, you become a snake, and a snake over and over again. I mentioned this in a previous week. And the snake then used to slither around that courtyard. One time the family went out, they left their child, so his grandkid was left in a swing. The baby started crying because there was nobody there close by. So the snake, because they were attached, he was attached to his family, now to his grandchild. He slithered down the rope to see how he could help the baby stop crying, not realizing that he's a snake and his family members would see him as a snake. They came, they saw the snake slithering, and they killed the snake. They beat the snake and killed the snake. And then, from the snake, he became a keeda, an ant. And then Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji came through again with Bhai Mardana Ji, and they sat down, the children came out again, they matha teked Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji, and then Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji saw this ant in the drainage, because that's where the ants live in India, because the drainage in this country is obviously underground and we don't generally see it there, it's obviously open, and you can see the dirty water going through and all the dirt through the drainage systems. And they saw this ant and they asked Bhai Mardana Ji to bring the ant out. Bhai Mardana Ji looked at Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji, the ants in the nali, in the drainage, in the gutter. But Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji said, no, bring the ant to me. And the ant came, and out of the ant came this spirit, this soul of this person. And now he was really dukhi, he was really in pain, because he'd now had to live through all those different life forms, when if he would have believed in Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji the first time when he was a human, if he'd have believed the teachings, that's what we're here to do, believe the teachings. Believe and then follow the teachings. He would have been liberated then. He had to go through all those lives, and now being an ant, he realized, living in a gutter in the dirt, that having this attachment is worthless, because the family moves on. Family moved on, continued to work, have children, they started to focus. He didn't move on, he was stuck in their attachment. But Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji now blessed him with liberation. He was due to be blessed originally, but his attachment, mohe chotana khai, he felt the blows of attachment because he didn't believe, and therefore he had to come over and over again in these different lives. However, if you're a believer, you don't face the blows of attachment, and you are blessed and liberated, become one with the Lord. Around the time of the mid-1700s, around 1750, the Sikhs were being oppressed. A new governor of Lahore, Mir Mannu, became the governor of Lahore just before 1750. And at that time, the Sikhs were being oppressed by the Mughals and forcefully trying to be converted into Islam. They would live in the jungles, the Singhs, the Khalsa army. But a lot of their families would still live in the villages, the women and children. And at that point, Mir Mannu decided that, you know, on the Islamic forces there decided that they're going to put prices on Sikhs' heads. They would pay 10 rupees for a head of a Sikh. And obviously the people of the time who were not Sikhs, they would easily, rather than going into the jungles, because they wanted to finish Sikhi, so they wanted to kill anybody who was a Sikh, they'd go into the villages, capture the women and children, and take them to Lahore, where they'd be put into prisons and do the work. Now the Bibiyan, so we don't generally hear about the Sikh women and their sacrifices for us to be living in this generation now, to live in luxury. Those women were taken to a prison in Lahore, and sometimes we say that in the Ardas, Mir Mannu, the care de vich bibiyan were kept, where they would have to piece atta. So in the old days, we get flour now, it's already ground. They would have to grind atta using something called a chakki made of stone, where you twist it in a circle, and the grain, which is quite big, quite large, is ground down to the form of flour that we see today. And they had a rate of, they had to do sava man. Now 1 man is around 40 kilograms. Sava man is 1 1/4. So a quarter of 40 is another 10. So about 50 kilograms they would have to do, they'd have to grind every day so that if they were to be given any food. Now, they didn't face attachment because they were threatened that your Singhs are in the jungles. If you want to see them again, then you need to grind, you need to become Muslims, you need to convert. They were believers in the teachings of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji. They had followed the path of Tan Sri Guru Gobind Singh Ji and taken Khandi Di Pahul. They were part of the Khalsa. They didn't face that attachment to the world, to their families, because they refused. And at one time Mir Mannu came down and they refused. So what they would do, they would threaten them by killing their children. They would hold, one Mughal would hold the spear and the child would be tossed up in the air, babies, and so they would land on the spears. I'm sure we've seen pictures like this. There's some pictures in this Gurdwara where a child is being tossed up and falling back on top of the spear to threaten these women, to say, we'll kill your children, you have to convert. They were not attached because they knew that the child was gaining Shahidi and they were being liberated, and for them being believers, they would be liberated, they would be protected. Those children were then cut up in small pieces and made necklaces, garlands, and put around those bibias' necks. In this day and age, no one. Have we got that faith? Have we got that strength and belief that we'll be able to go through all of that and still keep our faith and trust in Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji's teachings and keep our Sikhi? Maybe some of us do, but how society works, most of us probably don't, because we become followers of society. We don't even need to be threatened to be leaving this path and going astray and following society. True believers, like those Bibiyan, like ultimately that old person in the time of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, ultimately took him a few life forms, ultimately he realized not to be attached. But especially these Bibiyan, who had to face all this torture, they still never gave up their Sikhi because they were true believers. They never faced the blows of attachment. They were away from attachment. They were away from all the Panchjors. They were contemplating the name of the Lord. They were protected by the Lord and they were liberated. Incidentally, Mir Mannu only lasted 2 or 3 years. Riding away on his horse, he fell off his horse, and his leg was stuck, or his body, he was still stuck, and he was dragged along by the horse, and that's how he died. So he only lasted 2 or 3, 4 years. But even in that time, what those Bibi had to go through is why we're here today. Who, whether it be male or female, child, who could go through that? We would still possibly be attached or in the Panchjor. Like I said, society is not even doing that to us these days, and we're leaving this path after all that those Sikhs in that time did for us, so we can be living here today in luxury. A true believer doesn't face any blows on their face, but ultimately they do not face the blows of attachment or any of the Panchjor, because they always truly believe in the teachings and they will be liberated. They're always in true love with Waheguru.
Manna jam ka saath na jai.
Manna, a true believer, jam ka saath na jai. Jam jamdoot, the angels of death. Ka saath, they don't go with the angels of death, because they go and become one with the Lord Waheguru. Just quickly, a couple of years ago when I went to India, I met a Sikh and he was telling me about his father. I forget their names now, but I remember the story of what happened to his father. Now his father was a great Gursikh, followed the teachings, a true believer. They would do a lot of meditation, partake in sangat. When they were about to die, when they were really old, or not when they were about to die, but when they were really old, they couldn't do Ishnan themselves in the morning, and their son would have to take them, wake up with them, take them to the, obviously in India, through the courtyard where the water is, and bathe them, because they were really old, they couldn't do it themselves. Now the father would always wake up first, 1 o'clock in the early hours, Amrit Vela, wake his son up and take him to get the Ishnan done. One time, the son woke up and he looked to the side and he couldn't see his father, because obviously in India a lot of the time, people, there's only, in their houses, in their courtyards, they only have 2 or 3 rooms and everybody still sleeps in the same room. They looked to the side, their father wasn't there. And they thought, my father's really old, he can't even walk. I have to carry him everywhere. Where could he have gone? The son heard the water running. And he went round and he went through the courtyard where the water was. And as he opened the door, he saw his father and he saw Panj Teyar Singh. So 5 Khalsa Singhs, or 5, if you would, the Panj Pyare, doing the bath of his father. When he saw that, he shut the door and he went back. When he realised what he'd seen, he'd come back and he saw his father there by themselves and the Panj Pyare had gone. And he asked his father, what happened here? What was this? This amazing Kautak. And his father said, it was my time to leave this earth. And the Panj Pyare had come to take me away. He was a true believer. Jam ke saath na jaye, the Jamdoots, the angel of death, just comes nowhere near a person who's a true believer. The Panj Pyare come themselves to take you to the court of the Lord of Waheguru. And he said, because you've seen them, they've given me some more time. And so he continued on, and then only a few weeks later, I think it was 2.5 weeks later, his father left the world to the Charan of Waheguru and became one with Waheguru. But again, at that point, what it showed me is the meaning of this pankti. Manne jam ke saath na jaye. We hear this a lot, that the angel of death doesn't come nowhere near, but that's an actual physical example that only happened a few years ago. And the son saw it with his own eyes. The Panj Pyare came to take, and there's many examples of Gursikhs like that in this country, not just in India, in this country, where the Panj Pyare come themselves and take the Gursikh away, because the Gursikh is a true believer in the teachings of Tan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji. Manna, a true believer, doesn't have to face the angel of death. Taking that a little bit further, Jam can be mean to be born, Jai can mean die. A true believer doesn't come and go in this world through 8.4 million life forms. A true believer is one with Waheguru, is liberated.
Aisa naam niranjan hoye.
Aisa naam niranjan hoye. Niranjan, Waheguru. Niranjan, I explained last week, means completely pure, immaculate, no stain, no black mark. Aisa, this is how the name, Naam, of the immaculate, the pure Lord is. This is how he is. How is he?
If
you want to know, if you become a true believer, you will be just like these Gursikh, these Sakhiyan that we've shared. That is how the believers of the name of the true immaculate Lord are. Because those believers, I think I've said that a little bit wrong. Aisa naam niranjan hoye. The true believers, this is the importance of a true believer, because they contemplate on the name of the immaculate Lord. These Sakhiyan that we've heard of, these Sikhs who are believers. And how would we find out? Je ko man jana, if we believe as well, man koi, in our mind. If we realize and we put faith and we believe within our mind, we realize the extent of the immaculate, the pure Waheguru, and the name of the pure of Waheguru, because we become believers ourselves. If I've made any mistakes, just like I have at the end there, I beg for forgiveness. If I've offended anybody, I beg for forgiveness. Just like every week, I pray to Akal Purkh Waheguru that we all become believers. We all become one with Waheguru. We all gain the kushi and the love of Waheguru, and we all become one with Waheguru. We all become true Gursikhs, like we're hearing about in this discourse. And at the same time, I beg you, the Saad Sangat, to bless me with Brahm Gyan, the true knowledge, so I can continue sharing the teachings of Sri Japji Sahib with you. Deho sajjan si chiriya, jiyo hova sahib syo mel.
Aisa
नाम निरंजन होए, जे को मन जाने मन कोए। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा।